We have the new vice presidential nominee with Donald Trump, Governor Mike Pence, with us this morning.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
What has it been like since Friday when it was announced that you were the guy?
Well, it's just been very humbling for me and my family. You know, as I said, I'm the grandson of an Irish immigrant who came to this country, came through Ellis Island. My grandfather drove a bus for 40 years. My mom was raised in Chicago, Illinois, and my parents, ran a gas station business in a small town. So for me to be in that moment was just very humbling and very meaningful, and we just couldn't be more grateful for the confidence that Donald Trump and now that Republican delegates have placed in us and in our family.
Yeah. Have you said to yourself, why me?
I have. We're really blessed in this party with a lot of extremely talented men and women, and any one of which I think could have come alongside this nominee and helped him carry his message across the country. But we're determined as a family to do our best to carry the message that I truly do believe this good man will be a great president of the United States, and we're going to work our hearts out between now and Election Day to tell that story.
Governor Ted Cruz took the stage last night. Everyone was wondering, is he going to endorse? No one had seen the speech. Donald Trump said he had seen the speech 2 hours before. Still let him go up there and talk. He's your friend. You endorsed him. Were you surprised, and what was your reaction when he didn't endorse?
Well, I was glad he came. I was glad Marco Rubio spoke up and gave an outstanding presentation by video, and Scott Walker did a fantastic speech, and Chris Christie the day before. I think what you're seeing is a party that's coming together. There's always going to be differences and nuances in the way people express that. But what I sensed in that hall the last several days, and especially last night, is a Republican Party that is coming together around the stakes of this election and the choice of this election, and I think you're going to see that more and more in the days ahead.
As evangelical, I know he's a conservative. He's been very vocal about his faith. Y'all are friends. I was a little shocked personally because I thought he would come on stage just to honor you and say, I support this ticket, and he didn't do that.
Well, I didn't hear all of Ted's speech. I did hear him congratulate Donald Trump on winning a hard-fought winning a hard-fought campaign. Look, this was a tough and challenging primary. These are tough competitors, and I've been through a few tough elections myself, and I know that those feelings can be strong. So I was grateful that he came. I was grateful that he congratulated our nominee, and I'm absolutely confident that in the days ahead you're going to continue to see this party come together and present the choice to the American people.
Well, I mean, it didn't surprise anyone. You're used to being in front of people. You're an impactful congressman as far as 4 in the House. You're a governor of a state, and you're a radio talk show host. So if anyone could go out there and command the spotlight and feel comfortable, it was you. And you wouldn't look at yourself at the monitor when we were rolling the sound clip. I thought that was interesting. But you were really strong. And I haven't found anyone on any channel that didn't think so. However, the subject is changing today. It's about Donald Trump and his speech. But before he did that, he gave an interview to the New York Times, at which time he did some things that, if I'm looking at your career, that you would not agree with. He talked about, when it comes to Russia threatening activities, he says if they went after the Baltic states, he will decide then if he will fulfill his obligation as president of the country and defend the Baltic states against Russia. He went on to say that in our country, we have no right to lecture others on the way they do things. How are we going to lecture when people are shooting policemen in cold blood? And he also seemed to back President Erdogan, despite of his arresting of 8,000 people and Islamic fundamentals principles that he's putting into Turkey. That's not what you think, Mike Pence.
Well, I'm very confident that Donald Trump will stand by our allies and stop apologizing to our enemies. But I think, I haven't seen the exact context of his words there, Brian, but I think Donald Trump's position very broadly with regard to our allies and with regard to treaty obligations and NATO is that it's time for our allies to begin to pay their fair share. It's time for people to begin to step up. Now, all of us, with the aggressive actions by Russia in recent years, are disappointed and frustrated with
by the president backing down
with this administration. And but what I hear in that comment and what I've heard from Donald Trump in our conversations is we're going to stand strongly for our allies. I think the statements about Turkey reflect that same principle.
Right.
But at the same time, we're going to begin to say to allies around the world that the time has come for for them and for their citizens to begin to carry the financial cost of these international obligations.
What do you say to our NATO nation?
Have you noticed we're next to a freight train track?
I have.
Governor, yeah, we're going to move the train in 4 years if we're back here in Cleveland. But what do you say to the 27 NATO nations that say, oh, my goodness, the superpower doesn't have our backs?
Well, the NATO alliance since World War II has been a mutual defense alliance, and I have every confidence that Donald Trump will see to it that the United States of America stands by our allies and lives up to our treaty obligations. But that being said, I think he makes an enormously important point that I think resonates with millions of Americans, that at a time where we have $19 trillion in national debt, that we need to begin to look to our allies around the world to step up and pay their fair share.
Sure. It's no secret that you and Donald Trump are not in lockstep on some issues. But then at the same time, when we listened to you last night, just a couple of blocks from where we're sitting, it was very clear that while you are, for the most part, the old-fashioned conservative kind of guy, your approach completely fuses perfectly with Donald Trump's bold new direction on where he wants to take the country. I
believe it does. You know, we've just gotten to know each other in the last few weeks. We've spent a considerable amount of time together. And I'm supporting Donald Trump because I think he's got the right style of leadership, that strong American leadership that I think is distinctly American. But I also think he's got a vision for this country to get this economy moving again, to restore America's standing in the world, and to make sure that we have the kind of appointments to the Supreme Court of the United States that will respect our most cherished liberties.
Sure. And, you know, you've got to hand it to Donald Trump. While it was a bruising campaign, and, you know, Ted Cruz is Exhibit A of that, he wound up with more votes in the primary than any Republican has in history. And he has said over the last month or so, you know, it's not just a campaign, it's a movement. And as we travel around the country, it kind of feels like it.
It is a movement. It is a movement. 37 states. And you know, I believe in the collective wisdom of the American people. The American people throughout our history have always known that from time to time who the right person was in the right moment. And I think Donald Trump is the right man at the right time to make America great again, to make us strong at home and abroad. And I believe the competitive process we just passed through has produced the right nominee, and on all the issues that matter, I stand shoulder to shoulder with him and look forward to carrying that message across the country.
Well, America is getting to know you. All of our viewers at home that are watching, what is something that maybe we don't know about you that you'd like to share? Last night you said, for those of you who don't know me, which is most of you. I know you talked about your son being a Marine, is that right?
That's right.
You have 2 daughters, you're married to your wife for 31 years, and you said even though last night was the highlight, one of the highlights of your life, it doesn't even compare to the night you married your wife.
That's right.
Really sweet. What else would you like us to know about you?
Well, just that I'm a conservative, but I'm not in a bad mood about it. You know, really and truly, as I said, you know, I got involved in politics very early on. I was involved in the Democratic Party in my hometown, but when I began to hear the voice of Ronald Reagan, his ideals, I heard in him the American ideals that my father raised me to believe in. My grandfather came to this country to share and to live in, and that journey for me throughout my life has been animated by those ideals and by those principles. And you know, in a time when in a time when there's a lot of contention and a lot of division, I think people who know me well know that, like Abraham Lincoln said, he said, take your job seriously, but don't take yourself in your job too seriously. And that's a pretty good description of me.
Governor, as you look at the map, you know that Republicans have their backs against the wall of late with changing demographics, and if you look at what happened in the last 2 presidential cycles, clearly by naming you, Donald Trump helps his strategy of getting the Rust Belt. What's your message to Michigan and Pennsylvania? What do you think that you can do to turn that red?
Well, let me take issue with the Rust Belt terminology to begin with. We've got a lot of great things happening all across the Midwest.
I mean, look at Ohio, for example. Yeah. I mean, it's coming back big time.
That's right. You got Ohio coming back. You got more Hoosiers working than ever before. You got the great leadership in Wisconsin with Scott Walker. Bruce Rauner is in the fight to turn Illinois around. We got a great Republican governor now in Kentucky. I think.
But yet President Obama keeps carrying it. carried those states twice.
Well, I think times are changing. I think you've got 31 Republican governors across this country who are demonstrating that you can balance budgets, lower taxes, make the right investments in education and roads and even health care, and you can create a growing economy. I think the Republican governors around the country are transforming these areas, and I expect voters are going to reflect that this fall.
Sure. This is really, you know, and they say, it seems they say it every election cycle. This really is a clear choice. When it comes to a choice, you got the businessman and the guy from Indiana, and then you've got the career politician and somebody to be named later. But obviously, they are insiders, and Trump, for the most part, an outsider.
That's
with
right.
you.
That's right. And I really tried to frame that last night, that, you know, if the other party was trying to offer someone who is the exact opposite of what the American people are crying out for change, crying out for someone new, crying out for some way to upset and change the direction of the status quo, they couldn't have done a better job. I mean, you know, there's no question, to be around Donald Trump, to know him, to know his family, to have a sense of the enthusiasm and the vision, to know his long and successful career, is to know, you know, this is a man who gets things done. He's an outsider, and I believe he's going to bring real change to Washington, D.C. Working with Republican majorities in the House and the Senate, I really think we're going to turn this country around.
Have you played golf with him?
I did play golf with him.
Who won?
Did you let him win?
I can confirm I did not let him win. I hit a few good shots, which is a good description of my game.
But you did lose?
Yeah, I did lose.
Apparently handled
Thank you
but
so
I had
much.
fun.
All right.
Thank you. Congratulations on being the choice. He chose you.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Who's your nominee? This guy right here.
Very nice.
All right.
Mike,
And don't forget, Donald Trump speaks tonight, so try to get over there to the convention center if you're not doing anything.
by the way, do we have to validate the parking for all these Secret Service?
Yes, you do.
It'd probably help.
I asked him, I said, more Secret Service than when you're governor? And he said, oh, yeah, a lot more.
Good luck to you, Governor.
Thank you.